Great. Hi, good afternoon. As Roger said, I'm Roisin Cassidy and I'm a Technology Enhanced Learning Advisor from York St John University. And I have this poster here with the snappy title of Evidencing Staff Commitment to the UK Professional Standards Framework via Mahara ePortfolios. I do have a large paper version of this out by the refreshments, so if pictures of it or selfies with it is your thing, it's out there. And I will also put it available online later on in the week. Just a bit of background, York St John University, it is in York. It became a university in 2005, but it originated from being a teacher training college. We have approximately 6,500 students, about 700 staff, of which about 300 are academic staff. So we did recently acquire research degree awarding powers, but traditionally our strengths have always been in teaching, learning and assessment. And the York St John CPD framework was conceived as a means of recognising and evidencing staff's achievements and excellence in teaching, learning and assessment. Essentially what it is, it's called Recognising Academic Practice, and it brings together all staff development into one single scheme that works towards accreditation with the Higher Education Academy. So it's heavily aligned with HEA and the UK PSF, which is UK Professional Standards Framework. For anyone not familiar with that, it's a national framework that sets out the professional standards and guidelines for recognising staff's commitment to excellence in teaching and learning. So it has three dimensions to it. It sets out what the areas of activity are that those teachers and support roles should be undertaking, the core knowledge that they demonstrate in doing so, and also then the professional values that underpin all of that. And so our CPD framework, we were accredited by the HEA in 2012 to deliver and assess on that in-house. It's been recently revalidated in 2015, so we can continue to run this. And what it means is that we can assess how our academic and support staff meet that criteria in terms of levels of Associate Fellow, Fellow, Senior Fellow and Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy. There are two routes to doing that. There's a paper route, a written route, where you could submit a portfolio, if you like, a written portfolio of 2,000 to 7,000 words reflecting on how you meet all of those standards. But the area I'm talking about here is the dialogic route. And at the inception in 2012 of this framework, we had about 36% of our staff had some kind of fellowship with the HEA. But the university set a target of achieving 100% engagement with this framework by 2015, which, happy to report, we achieved. This just past summer. I hasten to add it's now slipped back down because obviously we've got new staff coming in September, but quiet down on that. We reached the 100%, which is the big headline. Engagement meaning that either they have now some form of fellowship or they were in the process of achieving that fellowship with us. So a bit more about the dialogic route then that I'm talking about here. How it runs is that participants have to collect and collate evidence in our portfolio system, so that's Mahara obviously, as to how they meet those professional values, those areas of activity and that core knowledge that the HEA sets out in its framework. Participants come to an initial workshop where they're given some overview of the scheme, and that's run by our learning developer. So I sit as part of a wider directorate called Academic Development, and this is very much a kind of team effort from the Technology Enhanced Learning side, but also the learning developers. After that workshop, they decide on which route to go for, and that's followed up by a 3-hour workshop, so it is quite intense. It's not just a 3-hour sit down on Mahara, which I probably wouldn't see them ever again. It looks mostly at the criteria and helping them guide through that framework and seeing how they meet all of those areas of expertise. After that, and I have a slot in there of about 1 hour where I look at the system, so it's not a long time to kind of cover the grounding of Mahara in its whole. And I would say I have to do a little bit more thinking to figure out whether we go for a shopping trolley or a spine approach with this. But I know we do follow the Granny Mahara approach of giving them kind of a castle rather than a hut. So we very much say there's no template involved here. Use your creativity and really think through the criteria and how you meet them. And that was a conscious decision when the framework was conceived in order to use this as a formative process, because the final assessment is not the ePortfolio, it's the dialogic. It's a 1-hour interview where they sit with an in-house assessor and bring the portfolio up as an aid memoir, if you like, and go through that with them in an interview. Not a viva, we hasten to add. It's very informal, and this whole framework is treated as an opportunity to celebrate what they've already been doing in their practice. It's not to kind of grill them and catch them out. Approximately 90%, maybe 85 to 90% have chosen the dialogic route over the paper route. And one of the reasons we think that's been so successful is because it is an opportunity to have that give and take, to discuss their experience and to kind of expand on points, rather than when you've got a written document in front of you where you're limited to word count. There isn't really the opportunity to explore in as much depth as there is with the portfolio and with the discussion. What we've seen then, as I said, with the professional dialogue route is that it has been quite successful and celebrated by the participants, not only because of that dialogue with the assessor, but also there's a mentor as part of this process. So after the workshop that I mentioned, they have 3 months in which to complete and gather this portfolio together. And that process, they have an opportunity to meet with an assigned mentor and discuss that portfolio, build it up with them and talk about how they're getting along, almost kind of as a mini assessment with their mentor. And that's seen as really valuable to kind of stop, reflect and think about how they're approaching their teaching and learning, rather than just going full force every day at it, kind of using what they've been doing up to that date. So quickly, what have they said about it then? As part of this reaccreditation, we did a feedback study last Christmas with those who have achieved it, and that's about 169 staff we've brought through this scheme. That's not all the staff who have it, just the ones who've achieved it while at York St John. We had a less response rate than we'd like, but I will be doing a more in-depth study of use of Mahara this year. But some really positive feedback. So quickly here, some people saying do the dialogue route, use your mentor and the time with them effectively, dedicate the time as the process is relatively straightforward and Mahara bit is not time consuming. Think through your evidence and use the templates and have confidence in your practice. Another one saying here, it's been good for me to use the ePortfolio in a real world scenario rather than simply exploring and testing its features for the benefit of teaching others. And that was really key, because another reason that we adopted the ePortfolio route and the dialogic route as an option was in the early days. This was in early days when we first adopted Mahara, and trying to increase engagement from staff with the system. So we were hoping by them engaging with it for their own purposes, it would trickle down and filter into the classroom. And as you can see from that feedback there, it has, anecdotally, we've seen that it has increased use of it in programs. So we now see widespread kind of use of Mahara in sports science programs, in youth and community work, and in music programs. So what I'm hoping to do is look at that in a bit more detail this year, but it has had some kind of effect on use of the system generally. The ones here with the thumbs down, you can see that it hasn't all been roses. So I really enjoyed the process, and once I understood the ePortfolio, I did find it rewarding. But another one saying it would have been useful to have been advised to set up the portfolio in advance, because much of the focus was on the IT related to the portfolio rather than the content. And I think that's a trap we still need to kind of continue to not fall into, if you like, is focusing too much on click here, do this, and this is what the system can do, but rather have a more general approach to looking at the content first. So feel free to have a look at more at those comments while you're out having a coffee. I will show you just as well that there are QR codes here, so you can see some examples of fellowship, senior fellowship and associate fellowship portfolios. I have a couple of links I can bring up, one or two if I have time, but as well, the inhibitors won't come as any surprise to you, time pressures, lack of motivation and trying to get people to understand the value of this. But modelling practice has been really important, and as one of the earlier presenters said, I believe it was Cassidy as well, that needing to lead by example. So all of us in the academic development have developed Mahara ePortfolios. That would be no surprise that we've done it, but our learning developer colleagues have also done it and modelled best practice in using the system for this as well. So that's me. If you have any questions, I will be hovering around, but hopefully you've taken something from that and will have an opportunity to see the examples that I put on the poster. Thank you.